So, kind of going off of that, we had a discussion and broke the essay writing process into kind of three parts. So today we're going to start with prompts and brainstorming to kind of figure out what you even write about. Then we're going to move on to content and structure to kind of figure out how to make your essay stand out. And lastly, we'll do editing and workshopping to kind of tweak your essay and make sure that it flows well and shows that you're ready for college. So starting off, we're going to start with prompts and brainstorming. So we'll go over the current Apply Texas prompts. We'll talk through some brainstorming activities and how to start your essay.
Okay, so we have put the Apply Texas prompts here. We know that not all of you are going to be using Apply Texas, so this may not apply to everybody, but it's a good thing to start thinking about. And really, every prompt tends to come back to the same basic idea, which is who are you and what are you going to bring to our campus? The Apply Texas prompts this year are, sorry, I cannot see. A is tell us your story. What unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career that have shaped who you are today? B is most students have an identity, an interest, or a talent that defines them in an essential way. Tell us about yourself. The third prompt is a little more creative. It says, you've got a ticket in your hand. Where will you go? What will you do? What will happen when you get there? So we're going to watch a little bit of this video, 9 college essay mistakes and how to avoid them. We're not going to watch the whole thing today, but we will, like I said before, send out the presentation later and you can watch the entire video if you want to hear more.
What's up, friends? College Essay Guy here. If we've never met before, I'm the author of College Essay Essentials, which is the #1 book on college essays, and I hope that's still true when you watch this video. Today I'm going to share with you 9 mistakes that I see students make in their essays all the time, and I promise not to scream at you the entire time. Hope you enjoy. Number 1, students oftentimes will choose a common topic, they'll make common connections, I'll explain that in a second, and they'll use common language. And that's a surefire way to blend in. What do I mean? A common topic, they'll write about basketball, common connections, how it's taught them hard work, discipline, and perseverance. And then they'll use common language like teamwork really does make the dream work, or that's how I realized the true meaning of leadership. Instead, choose an uncommon topic when possible, make uncommon connections, and use uncommon language. Let's say, for example, you don't even have an uncommon topic. You've got basketball to write with. Well, those uncommon connections are going to be all the more important. I want to learn how basketball has taught you the value of healthy boundaries. Or I want to learn about how basketball has taught you the value of democracy. Or better yet, when you shouldn't value democracy, when in fact you need to just take it to the rack, right? Take it to the hole. You don't need to actually listen. Anytime that you can, in those connections, sort of subvert conventional wisdom, that's going to help your paragraph stand out. It's going to help your essay stand out. Just to recap, not common, uncommon topics, uncommon connections, uncommon language. Second mistake that I see students make a lot.
I was on mute. So kind of tying off that video, some things to keep in mind is that essays are an opportunity to get to know you and the kind of person you are and what are your strengths. And then you want to be able to write about what makes you you. So use your own voice. So if you tend to be a funny or witty person, try and channel that in your essay. If you're more serious or factual kind of based, go ahead and be yourself in the essay and don't try to be somebody else. Use your own personal voice. And then keep in mind what you will bring to the campus, and you're uniquely yourself, so you're going to bring something special, and just try to figure out which examples in your life showcase that. And then write about your response to a challenge, not just simply what that challenge was, but try and write about how you responded to it. One thing we wanted to address was that COVID-19 is going to be a common topic this year. So if that is something you decide to write about, do keep in mind that admissions counselors are going to see a lot of essays about COVID-19. So make sure that if you are writing about it, it is something that is unique and it kind of spin it of how you dealt with the challenge that it posed. Also, some colleges have added a question to their applications that is specific to COVID-19 that is separate from their other application essay. So just kind of keep an eye out for that as well. And lastly, don't undersell yourself. You've gotten this far, so celebrate the small and big wins. A lot of times students, don't think that small things they do are that great, but just try and find those things and celebrate the small, unique things about yourself. And then this is a quote from a paper called Shitty First Drafts. And it just says that almost all good writing begins with a terrible first effort. You need to start somewhere. So start by getting anything down on paper. A friend of mine said that the first draft is the down draft. You just get it down on paper. The second draft is the up draft. You fix it up. You try to say what you have to say more accurately. And then the last third draft is the dental draft, where you check every tooth to see if it's loose, cramped, or decayed, or even, God help us, healthy.
So how do you know what to write about? Here is some tips on brainstorming to figure out your topic. The first thing that I have found really useful working with students is students will come to me and say, I have no idea what to write about. I have nothing to write about. But then I start having a conversation with them and asking questions, and they end up having a lot to say. So it was just a matter of having that conversation with them being like, okay, write that down. So go and have a conversation with somebody. Talk about your hopes and dreams. Talk about the challenges you've had and what lessons you've learned from them. And make sure you write everything down. Another thing to do to figure out what to write about is to practice positive self-reference to define your voice. What this means is you're going to try to address, I am a blank person. I am a hardworking person. I am a funny person, that sort of thing. Or if you can't figure that out yourself, talk to your loved ones. How would your loved ones describe you? Talk to your favorite teacher, talk to your friends, talk to your parents, see what they say about you, and then try to figure out what has happened in your life to exemplify what you are trying to say. Another tip is to think about life from the third person. Where are the ups and downs in your life, and what themes in your life make your story come full circle? We'll talk a little bit more about stories later, but it's a good idea to think about your life as a story and write about it from that perspective. We have another quote from Anne Lamott. The first draft is the child's draft, where you let it all pour out and then let it romp all over the place, knowing that no one is going to see it and that you can shape it later. Just get it all down on paper, because there may be something great in those 6 crazy pages that you would never have gotten to by more rational, grown-up means. There may be something in the very last line of the very last paragraph on page 6 that you just love, that is so beautiful or wild that you now know what you're supposed to be writing about, more or less, or in what direction you might go. But there was no way to get to this without first getting through the first 5.5 pages. Now, we don't want it to be like literally write 6 pages and pull 1 sentence out of that. We're just trying to say, like, write everything down, because you never know what you write down will end up turning into your essay. Just, don't censor yourself. Just put everything on paper and go from there. Sydney, you're on mute.
I know. I literally was like, dang it. So now we're just going to take a little coffee break. So whether you want to go grab a snack or a drink, or stand up and stretch a little bit, this is also going to be a time for any questions that have come up. So you can answer or write them in the Q&A or in the chat.
I did see that something has come up in the Q&A. I can't see that or the chat though.
I have the Q&A up. It says, write life like an anime in the essay, question mark.
Hey, if that's what you're into, then go for it. If you are that, what is it, like 15-year-old savior of the world, write about that.
There's another question coming up that says, does the essay have to be a challenge? That kind of depends on which prompt you pick or which prompt your school requires. So I think prompt A is the challenge one, correct, Georgia?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if your school does require prompt A, you can kind of take the prompts and mold them to your own interpretation of them, but you also don't want to like grab a topic from way far out that isn't related to the prompt at all. So I would say try and keep it close. So if it does ask for a challenge, they do want you to follow the guidelines they do provide. We have another question that says, if you were someone who had to read students' essays, what would stand out to you?
That's a really good question. I really like to see something a little unusual. Kind of like the guy said in the video, if everyone's talking about basketball, it will get redundant after a while. If everyone is talking about how hard sitting at home during COVID was, then it's going to get redundant after a while. So if you have something that makes you uniquely you volunteer at your mom's healthcare clinic and through that met really great people, or that was a completely random idea off the top of my head. My college essay, we talked about this earlier in the other webinar, but my college essay was actually about like arguing with my dad about September 11th, which sounds like it was really kind of a dark topic, but I was at the age that September 11th had a pretty big impact on me. So I had to be a little careful because a lot of people would be writing about it. But my angle of like it being a direct conflict with someone in my family and how I mended that relationship with my dad was my own like kind of unique spin on it. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I work here at COFO, and I just wanted to jump in real quick because I have read students' essays, not for university, but for other topics. I was an English teacher, and I'll say that to me, what starts me reading is something I haven't heard before and something engaging. But what makes me feel connected to someone as they write their essay is when they talk about values that are them giving to others instead of them being the best or being really smart. And so as much as like when you think about the kind of values that you want to share and contributions that you want to share, if those can be things that can benefit others or benefit society, then that makes me feel a really positive connection versus someone saying, I'm the best basketball player, the best at this, or a really kind of, and I think that it can be tempting to write in that way. But if you can think about the things that make you valuable to others and valuable to communities, then that is what I always appreciate in an essay.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really helpful.
We have two more questions. One is, if already in college, do you still have to write an essay? I'm not sure if they're referring to transfer essays, but for the college applications, there are universities that require whether you're applying to college or whether you're transferring. So you'll just have to look into your specific college or university. There's one that says, can struggling with mental health be considered a challenge? I think absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you can definitely, go ahead, Georgia.
That, like, I actually have a student that wrote about something like that where this sounds it like this is one of those, like, it was kind of going into muddy waters, but they struggled with like anger management, which, you know, like that could come off really bad, but like they worked really, really hard to um, go to therapy, learn techniques, deal with their trauma, and they became a really great leader. Like they had proven their leadership potential through things they did within the school and volunteer efforts and stuff. And so it was great. Like they accomplished a lot through that. So absolutely, mental health is something that counts.
We had a quick question about how long essays should be. Usually there's a word count to follow. It's usually a max, I feel, or like it'll be, say, 250 words. So yeah, that'll just be kind of specific to either Apply Texas prompts or individual universities. There's a lot of questions coming in. I don't know, do we want to save these for the end or keep going through them?
Let's move on. There are two more opportunities, two more coffee breaks for you all to submit questions. And the other presenters, Julian and Rose, and maybe Sarah and Isabel, can answer some questions as well as we go along. If that sounds good to everybody.
Yep, it looks like a lot of these questions are going to be more content-based, so that'll be a good segue into our next steps.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Okay, so with that, our second topic is going to be content and structure. So we're going to go through some tips for that. We'll be going through a story arc with an example essay, and then we'll be doing a synonym activity to reword your sentences. So a lot of students struggle with just starting their essay. You know, they open a Word document and they don't know where to go. So the first thing to kind of think about is that thinking itself counts as writing. So kind of get comfortable with your topic, sit there and reword it. Just think about it a little bit, and topics and ideas will start coming to your head. Secondly, we encourage you not to start with your intro. Sometimes students will get bogged down with trying to craft this beautiful intro that's attention grabbing, and sometimes it's easier to just start with the content of and the body of your essay. Third, get anything down on paper, even if it's just making a list, or if you think it's terrible, it's a first draft, you can always rework it. So just kind of focus on, you know, getting whatever you can down. And lastly, use your own voice. So don't fake what you think admissions counselors want you to say. You know, it's important to relay who you are and get more than what your application shows them or tells them. And then moving on to the body of the essay. So one, you want to create a sound argument and of kind of what you're going to bring to the university or college. So an example is, I will contribute X to the campus and have done A, B, and C to prove it. So kind of using that, and then I learned the value of X while on my path, and the school will support me going forward because of A and B. Second, you want to show and not tell. So, you know, create imagery in your writing and say something like, I want this example or paragraph to show that I am blank adjectives. So some of them could be hardworking, passionate, funny, things like that, where you don't want to just list facts about yourself. You kind of want to show them how you are hardworking or passionate and such. And then lastly, tell a story. So don't just regurgitate your resume or the black and white college application. Don't just list facts without emotion. Try and show your personality and show who you are more than just your academic standing.
So speaking of telling a story, since this is a really common way to craft a college application essay, we want to go through what is a basic story arc. And we're going to use an example essay to illustrate this. We're not going to give you the link to the essay just yet. It will be included in the presentation that we send out. We're just going to give you snippets so that you don't have to read an entire essay in the middle of this whole thing. So when you're crafting a story arc, the first thing you want to do is do a setup. You want to explain who you are and kind of give the reader an idea of what your voice is. So in our example essay, which is called Coffee Shops and Coffee, it starts out with the line, "Before I came to America, I drank pu'er tea with my father every morning in my bedroom, sitting cross-legged on Suzhou silk mats beside a view of the lakeside reservoir." So this tells you several things about the author immediately. They're not American. You can kind of get the idea that they're Chinese. They have a good relationship with their father. They enjoy tea. And the "before I came to America" kind of gives you a hint as to where the rest of the essay is going. The next step is the inciting action. What sets off the events of your story? So in our example essay, it talks about how the author sits with their father and discusses news events from around the world. But primarily it was their dad discussing it and them just listening. So in this sentence, they say, "Secretly, I made a decision that I wanted to be the one to discuss the news with him from my perspective. So I decided to study in America to learn more about the world." The next step is the rising action. What happens before the problem of your essay occurs? So our author moves to America and is learning a ton, but they miss having that thing to, sitting on a mat, drinking tea and talking to people about the news. But what ended up happening is they found a coffee shop where they would be able to observe the people around them. And one of the things they say is, "I've also learned by watching leaders host meetings at the rectangle conference table at the back of the cafe. And I learned from the leaders of meetings, watching as they hold the edge of the table and express their ideas." So this all builds into the climax, the pivotal decision that basically the entire essay is going to revolve around. Everything's been building up to this point and everything is going to fall after this. So in our essay, the author says, "Straightening my back and bracing my shoulders, I stood up behind the conference table and expressed my creative ideas passionately." So they, as in the previous section, they learned by watching other people and now they're enacting it themselves. Then you have the falling action section. What happens as a result of your action? So our author says, "Last summer, I returned to Xiamen, China, and taught my father how to drink coffee." So this is all coming back around to that first sentence where they were sitting on the mat drinking tea with their father, but now they're coming back with these experiences and they're bringing coffee back with them too. And the final thing, the ending of the essay, is a resolution. Have you grown, or what have you learned? Instead of simply listening, I shared my experiences as a club president, a community leader, and a volunteer. I showed him my business plan and prototypes. So again, this wraps back around to what we were talking about before, that they wanted to be able to introduce subjects to their father. Now they're actually doing so, and they become a much more well-rounded person through these experiences. So we're going to kind of do an activity that ties in with this. We're talking a lot about showing, not telling. So basically, one of the big ways to do this is to do much more detailed description. So we're going to go back to Mentimeter and we're going to reword the sentence, "This coffee tastes good." That just tells, but show us that the coffee tastes good. If you still have it up on your phone, it should move forward in just a second, but otherwise go to menti.com and type in the code 9011825. these. There we go. You may need to hit refresh on your phones or on your browser if it's not coming up. Oh, this is great. The coffee reminded me of when I first reunited with my brother late last fall. That's a great thing because it's introducing more to basically more description that needs to be done. So it's a good introduction into an essay. The strong, rich flavor of this coffee is outstanding. We also have a couple of words for just to replace good, amazing and fantastic. Smells like teen spirit. I like that because it's got a good voice to it. Tastes like gumbo is very interesting, and I would hope you would be able to describe that further in your essay. This coffee is to die for. This is the best coffee I ever had. These are all much more descriptive than just the coffee tastes good. Another, like Thor throwing down the mug. The scent of coffee reminds me of home. The second the coffee hit my tongue, I began to feel more prepared for my presentation. That's great. Again, it's introducing more to talk about in the essay. On this crisp fall morning, I held the mug in my hand and felt the coffee warm me up from head to toe. I love it. I really do. The strong flavor of coffee reminds me of, I missed the end of it. They'll get there in a second. Strong flavor of coffee reminds me of happy and sad moments. There was another one that said the balance between sweetness and bitterness. These are all great. I'm glad you guys are thinking of all these different examples. It says a morning at 6 a.m. and coffee was the mood. All right, so like with the last Mentimeter, feel free to keep submitting these and we will include this in the presentation when we send it out so you all can get some really good ideas from this. I do want to point out my Starbucks Vanilla Blonde Latte lets me start my morning with a zesty pep and fills me with power. A hint we've gotten a couple of times is that saying something very specific rather than just coffee, but something like the Starbucks Vanilla Blonde Latte, if I said that right, it's just more description and more specific and it evokes more of a feeling in people too. So thank you all for all those great examples.
So now I'm just going to go over some content takeaway, some do's and don'ts. Some things to do would be take time to reflect on the prompt. Like we said, thinking is writing in its own way. Get anything down on paper, whether that's making a list or just simply starting writing and just writing whatever comes to your mind. Work on a sound argument to craft your thesis of what you bring to the university and why you want to go there. Turn your essay into a story, show and not tell, and then use your own voice. Some things not to do, don't write your intro first, try and work on the body. Don't copy your resume, try and show the admissions counselor something that isn't obvious on your just black and white college application. Don't list facts without emotion, and then don't fake what you think that the admissions counselors want to see. We're going to go ahead and take time for another coffee break. So if anyone else has more questions, we can go through some of them that were in the Q&A that we didn't answer live. I can look at those now. Maybe if it'll load. So one question that stood out to me was, is it true that essays will weigh more heavily this application season? I think that's a great question. So a lot of colleges and universities are taking a more holistic approach. So what that means is that they're looking at all of your materials more. A lot of places aren't even requiring you to submit test scores. So definitely if you choose not to submit your test scores, the essay may have a greater impact on whether or not you are admitted into that university. I don't know if Georgia or Sarah have anything to add on that.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Essays are going to be a big chunk of it this year. Because they're not going to have test scores and they're not going to be relying so heavily on numbers, they want to know more about you as a person. And that's part of why we're doing this webinar, and all the coaches are going to be like, please send us your essays, because we want to help and make sure that it really shows who you are and is a really good example of your work. This might have been the question we answered before about mental health as a challenge, but there was a second part to it. Would there be of how much info we share? That is like, you have a couple of answers already, but that's like a super complicated point, because it's basically, I agree with Jules that it depends on how much you feel comfortable sharing. In order to be as authentic as possible. Authentic doesn't mean you have to spill your entire life story out to them. It's just what can show them you while you are still able to like keep whatever privacy you feel like you need to keep.
We have another question that came in that asks, would struggling to choose a major be considered a challenge?
I can go ahead and answer this. We were talking earlier actually about like what we all wrote about in high school, and I didn't know what my challenge was per se. I struggled with trying to pinpoint one thing that really defined me. And in doing so, I realized that probably was my biggest challenge, is that there were a lot of little things that I had gone through that felt like the end of the world, or felt like something that had made me grow. And so from there, I kind of took that as me like being almost like a perfectionist. Like when things went wrong, it like internalized in me. And so from there, I decided to write my college essay about all these little challenges and little humps that I had to get over in order to get to the point where I was today, and how I grew from them. So if that's choosing a major and not knowing what your path is, then absolutely, that can definitely be a good essay topic, as long as you're able to kind of keep your focus on one quality or on some quality about yourself that is going to be like growing or learning from that process.
Yeah, I like to imagine if I wrote this essay and someone read it, when they walked away, would they remember more the challenge I talked about, or would they remember the skills or thing that I learned more? And so really, when writing about a challenge in a college application essay specifically, the goal is that should be the context, not the focus. And the focus should be on your amazing skills or empathy, or so for example, if your struggle is choosing a major, then you could talk about how you are a lover of learning and you always feel so drawn to different areas of study, and that while you might have to choose a major, you're excited to apply whatever that major is across lots of different areas. And so, when I walk away from that, I don't think that person couldn't decide. I think, wow, that person is so excited about learning different things. So I hope that that is helpful.
That was actually about how I was going to answer that, Sarah. So I think that's really good. We will have, I believe, one more coffee break in this webinar. So feel free to keep sending in those questions and we will, someone will answer them whether live or written out.
So now we're going to move on to the last section of the webinar, which is editing and workshopping. So we're going to talk through some group exercises that you can do, reading your essay out loud, and asking for help.
So the best way to edit your essay is to take it in several steps so that you're not like overwhelmed all at once. One of the big things that people say to edit your essay is to read it out loud to yourself. If you read your paper out loud, it will help you notice errors you overlooked. This can be like if a sentence sounds clumsy, if you use the wrong word, if you have a comma in completely the wrong place. Just make sure that when you're reading it out loud, you're reading it as you wrote it, not as you intended to write it. And that will help you catch a lot of common mistakes that way. The second big thing to look out for and to edit for is to check for cliches. These are going to be things like the early bird catches the worm, things that a lot of people say a lot. If you're saying something that a lot of people say a lot, you're not going to stand out. You're not going to be very original or unique. So try to see, you might have a cliche like that in an early draft of your essay, and that's fine. But when you're coming up on your final draft, you want to try to find a different way to word it and make a different point. The third really big thing is to always ask for help. Have friends, professors, or family read your essay for you. The reason for this is you have been looking at that same essay for possibly hours upon hours at this point, and that might make you kind of blind to some issues that are going to be really obvious to someone who looks at it with fresh eyes. It can also help if it's someone who knows you, they can tell you whether it actually sounds like you or not. The thing to remember with this is you don't actually have to take people's advice. If someone says like, oh, I hate that intro, and you're like, but I really like it, maybe it's okay to go ahead and keep that intro. Just, listen to people, get their advice, take it if it seems like good advice. So we've provided here a checklist you can use for proofreading. It's going over a lot of the same things that we've already talked about, but the big thing is to make sure that you're answering the prompt. Like I think Sydney was talking about before, don't end up going off in a completely different direction because it's not going to look so good that you couldn't follow the prompt. Make sure you adhere to the word count, especially if you're submitting things online. If you go over the word count, it might cut it off. So you really want to make sure that you're in the right word count. Make sure you're using the correct punctuation and also that you have the correct spelling. This is where I warn you not to rely too heavily on like spell checks because they might say not be able to tell the difference between different forms of there. So it's better to read over it yourself and make sure that things are looking good. You do want to make sure that even though we said skip the intro in the beginning, by the final draft, you want to have an introduction. You want to make sure it's interesting so people actually want to read the rest of your essay. You want to make sure to use both long and short sentences and vary the lengths from sentence to sentence. If you use a bunch of sentences of the same length right in a row, it gets really monotonous and hard to read. Again, avoid your cliches. Make sure that you're showing instead of telling. Don't just tell us the coffee tastes good. Describe the coffee. And make sure too that you're going deep and not wide. What this means is your resume is going to go wide. Your resume is going to cover everything you've ever done. Your essay is an opportunity for you to take an experience and tell us a lot more about that experience. So give us a lot more details about something instead of trying to go over everything in your life.
So this is kind of a sample rubric that we put together. It can be used for you to grade yourself, or to help you grade friends' essays if you want to read them. So it kind of just breaks it down into an advanced, a proficient, and a basic essay. And then it kind of looks at mechanics, so like sentence structure and grammar and vocabulary. Growth and change is the story format and the story arc. Informs about you. So does it showcase who you are as a person, or what challenges or how you overcame those challenges? It talks about college readiness and uniqueness. College readiness is more of, did it show what experience have you've gone through that show that you'll be successful at whichever university you do attend. So again, we're gonna send this out in a PDF format along with the presentation. I don't know why I just moved my hands weird. But anyways, so this will be available for you guys to use after the presentation. And then I'm gonna go over some application. Oh my God. All right. Application essay tips and tricks. So again, don't undersell yourself. Thank you, Zach. I am very excited. Don't undersell yourself. So one thing I skipped over is that if you happen to, help out your uncle with some office tasks and stuff, you can spin that to say that you have experience with being an administrative assistant. Edit and proofread your essays. Tell your story and use your voice. So be funny, get excited, use your hands. Tips and tricks are, all right, I'm gonna calm down. Avoid cliches. Ask for help. So ask your teachers, your friends, your family. They're the people who know you, and they can, let you know if an essay sounds like you or sounds, like you're trying to write what you think an admissions counselor wants you to say. And then lastly, don't wait until the last minute, no matter how appealing that is. November 1st deadlines for early admissions are going to come up soon, and then December 1st is a huge deadline for a lot of universities, and it's already mid-October, so don't wait. Get a head start and at least start brainstorming now.
Zoe says hi. So here is our third coffee break. It's an opportunity again for you to ask questions or just look away from your screen for a second and stretch if you want to do that. We have a question that I don't actually know the answer to. Will you do a webinar for scholarship essays? My instinct right now, off the top of my head, is no, because scholarship essays are often going to be very similar to college application essays in that they're going to ask you to describe yourself or describe a particular experience. But that is going to totally depend on the scholarship. Absolutely, like, go to your coaches if you're looking at a scholarship you want to apply for, and we'll talk to you about that essay and what you need to do that makes it different from a college essay or the same. There's a really good comment in chat because suddenly I can see chat for some reason. Programs account, which I think is Sarah, said, you can also ask for help when you're getting ready to write. I asked my family and some friends what they thought were some positive things I would bring to campus, and they helped a lot. That's a really, really good point, because I see it all the time with students where, again, they're like, I don't know what to write about. I don't have anything to write about. That I don't have any good qualities, which is not true. And other people can see it in you when you can't see it yourself. So it's a great time to talk to other people if you really feel like you're stuck on that, and other people can tell you what they see that you're not seeing yourself. And it's a great excuse to ask for compliments. This is true. Do we have to tie in our major into our essay?
There's one more question. You got it.
Sorry. That's another really great question. And it depends, I would say, on how much the major means to you. So like my college essays had nothing to do with my major whatsoever, which actually turned out really nice because I changed my major about 2 weeks in. And that's something to keep in mind, is like your major is not set in stone. You can change it later. But if you're like, I have spent my entire life, you know, absolutely fascinated by marine biology, and I know this is what I'm going to do, and I love it so much, and here's like the different stuff I've done to prove that, absolutely talk about that. But if you have other things to talk about, like, you know, a life experience, like I mentioned before, like my essay ended up being about like arguing with my dad, again, which sounds terrible, but I think I spun it right. That had absolutely nothing to do with my major, and that was fine. All right. Okay, so another one came in. If we're writing about mental health challenge and our major is psychology, we could tie it into the essay. I think that would be great. Like, especially if your mental health challenges are what made you interested in psychology, or like witnessing a mental health challenge in someone in your family, which I think is true of a lot of people who go into psychology. I think that would be awesome, because it tells a lot about yourself and who you are and what you're interested in.
So we got another question that says, would it be better if our essay is something completely different than our extracurriculars? I think that kind of ties into that showing and not telling, and finding something unique within that extracurricular. So the example in the video was saying how, like basketball, most people jump straight to teamwork. We lost a game and it was sad. So I think it's trying to find those unique lessons that you learn. So he touched on one about how you learn healthy boundaries in basketball. And so I think if you can find something like that within an extracurricular, then I would say go for it. But otherwise, you know, try and find something that's not just black and white on your college app.
That's that thing again where it's go deep, not wide. So don't list off every extracurricular that you've done, because that's already on your resume or your college application or whatever. But either, like the question kind of suggests, either find something else entirely, or take one of those extracurriculars and do a deep dive into what exactly you did and how that affected you. We had a question that was, if we're writing about a bunch of different challenges we've gone through, do we go into detail about each one, or just overall how it helped build us? That gets a little complicated when you come up against word counts. So be careful that, like, again, you're going deep and not wide and just listing a bunch of stuff. So be sure that you have enough space to go into everything in the amount of detail that you feel you need to exemplify whatever it is you're saying in your essay.
There's also a question about, I want to write how a concert made me realize I want to study sociology, but that clearly isn't a challenge. Would that work? I know that prompt B has to do with identity, and kind of more of like what you're passionate about. And I think that would be a great opportunity or great topic to write about if topic B is an option, because it's kind of you know, if concerts are super important to you, and then that was something you helped realize that you would like to be like a sociologist. I don't know, Georgia, do you have anything to add about that?
I think that's a really interesting topic. I think that's a very unique topic. So exactly what Sid said, like if you have the option to do topic B, I think that would fit topic B perfectly. If you are stuck with topic A, and I think some schools really want you to just answer topic A, you might have to spin it a little bit. And that would be something to brainstorm over, talk to your coach, talk to your family, that sort of thing. There's another one that came in that I know it's already been answered, but this is kind of off topic from essays. What if we didn't have much volunteer experience or extracurriculars in high school? That's actually pretty common. And this comes back to that, like, don't undersell yourself thing. You were doing something. What was it that you were doing? Was it that you didn't have time to do extracurriculars because you were working to support your family? That's amazing. That shows a lot of responsibility. Talk about that. Were you not working or doing like extracurriculars because you had to take care of younger siblings? Again, that's showing responsibility, that's showing leadership and things like that. You were doing something, just figure out what it is that you did and how to spin it. Even if you're like, you know, I was just sitting playing video games all day, there's going to be a way to spin that. Like, you know, I have really good skills at working with other people online because I play online games with other people. Like, I think that would be awesome.
All right. Do you think we want to move on? We're kind of close to time.
We sure are. Okay, so we went over a lot here, but there's still more resources out there, absolutely. One thing is we do have an article on College Board's website called the College Application Essay. This is a link, so when we send out the presentation, you'll be able to click on that link and read over what the article has to say about college applications.
We also have the COFO Connect app. So under the resources tab, you can click Getting into College and browse through a lot of resources that include essay writing tips and a link to the College Forward resource page that we just mentioned. COFO Connect is also a great place to find scholarship opportunities and a lot of other resources on the whole application process. And lastly, you know, the ultimate goal is to find a best fit university for you. So we encourage you not to get too wrapped up in trying to get accepted and lose your authenticity along the way. The most important thing is to be yourself, and you'll end up at the university that you were meant to be at. Yeah, that's our little key alert, major key alert.
So thank you. Here are our email addresses if you want to get a hold of any of us to talk about this further. As we've said throughout the presentation, feel free to reach out to your own coach. They'll know you and know what you need to write about. And yeah, just feel free to reach out with questions, comments, concerns. And we really appreciate you guys coming to this presentation. Oh, I don't think we brought up, there is a raffle for a gift card. We have kept track of who was here during this presentation, and we'll send a message to the winner. We'll draw randomly and send a message to a winner shortly. Oh, there's one more question. You are right, Jules. What if we join some clubs this year on Apply Texas when it asks us how many hours we did, what do we put? Basically you estimate like how many hours you did per week and how many weeks per year you did. And even if you are brand new to the club, go ahead and put it down because it shows that you had interest in whatever that is. But be honest, like you can overestimate a little bit, but don't like say you did 100 hours when you did 10.